Okay, here are 4 questions you can practice to hone your BeDMAS of fraction sense with. So press pause if you'd like, copy these questions down, and see if you actually solve the questions properly. The first question gives you 3/4 plus 1.5 times 3/5. Now remember, BeDMAS, there's a B, there's a D, there's an E, there's a DM, and there's an AS. So brackets is first, there are no brackets. E is exponents, and the reason why it's small e is because we don't tackle it in grade 8 until when you're grade 9, then you kind of work with exponents a little bit more, especially with BeDMAS. Then there's division and multiplication in the order they appear from left to right, and then there's additional and subtraction. So essentially there are 4 steps. The first one we have here is our multiplication. So I am going to write 3/4 plus, and I'm going to bring it down just a little bit here. I'm going to keep it right there. And then I'm going to really figure out what is this 1.5, which is a mixed fraction, is or improper is 3/2, multiplied by 3 over 5. Multiply that out, I'm going to get 9 over 10. So here I've showed my work for what the product of 1.5 is and 3/5 is right underneath it. But my next statement is 3/4 plus 9/10. And now that we have addition, we have to use our first multiple that 4 and 10 share. You don't have to use it, but it's the easiest. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 10, 20. 20 is the first one they share. If you said 40, that works. It just means you have to reduce your fraction, but 20 works. So I'm going to write this as an addition statement of equivalent fractions. The equivalent fraction to 3/4 that has a denominator of 20 is 15/20. The equivalent fraction to 9/10 is 18/20. And now that you have your common denominator, keep your denominator, add your numerators. You get 33/20, which is 1, and 13/20. Your second question says 1.5 plus 2. Now there's no operation in here, but we know that a number next to a bracket means multiplication. So 2 times 3/4 minus 1/2. So this is going to be 1.5 plus 2 multiplied by, find your common denominator, you're going to get 1/4. 2 multiplied by 1/4. Now if you can't do that in your head, just think of 2 as this, multiplied by 1/4 equals 2/4, which equals 1/2. Or if you cross reduced, you still get 1/2. So it's 1.5 plus 1/2, because that's what this reduces down to. And 1.5 plus 1/2 is simply 2. Question 3 says 1 3/4 plus 1.5 divided by 3/4. So another way I could have written this, if I erase this, I could put this in brackets and then say divided by 3/4. This is the same question, so maybe we'll solve it this way instead. So 1 3/4 plus 1.5, I'm going to change them both to 7/4 plus 3/2. Use my common denominator. 4 7/4 plus 6/4 is 13/4. So 13/4 is what the brackets work out to be, divided by 3/4. Well, our rule is if you have division by a fraction, change division to multiplication and use the reciprocal of the second fraction. Since I love to cross reduce, I'll go 4 over 4 is 1 over 1. And when I multiply, I get 13 over 3, which is equal to 4 and 1/3. And finally, your last question, 1/2 plus 1/3 times 1/4 divided by 1/5. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what this first multiplication division that I see from left to right is. That's 1/3 times 1/4. And 1/3 times 1/4, I'll do it in black, is 1/12. But notice how everything else stayed where it was. The next thing I'm going to do is the division. So some people decide right now they're going to add those two, but they don't. They should divide them. So 1/12 multiplied by the reciprocal of a fifth would be 5 over 1, or just 5. Will give me 5/12 when I multiply it out. And finally, 1/2 plus 5/12. You need a common denominator when you're adding or subtracting fractions. 6/12 plus 5/12 gives you a final answer of 11/12.